Mr. Blackwood, it's Ava.
Ava? Where is your mother?
They fired her. They pushed us outside.
Stay right there. I'm coming.
2 weeks earlier, Damien Blackwood had given Ava that card after she found his father's old gold watch under the library sofa. The whole mansion had searched for it, but Ava had been the one to find it while sitting quietly on the carpet with her crayons. Damien had knelt in front of her that day and said gently, "If anyone in this house ever makes your mother cry, you call me." Mariah had thought he was only being kind, but Ava had believed him. Now, standing outside the locked gates with nowhere to go, Ava pressed the number into her mother's old phone before Mariah could stop her. The call rang twice. Then a deep voice answered. Blackwood speaking. Ava's lips trembled. "Mr. Blackwood," there was a pause. "Who is this?" "It's Ava," she cried softly. "Mariah's little girl." His voice changed at once. "Ava, are you okay?" "No," she whispered. Mariah covered her mouth, her whole body shaking. Damien's voice became sharper. "Where is your mother?" "She's here," Ava said. "She's crying." Silence fell on the line. Then Damien asked, very slowly, "Why is your mother crying?" Ava looked back at the black iron gates. "They fired her. They pushed us outside." Mommy's box fell in the rain. Mariah reached for the phone. "Ava, please." But Ava kept going. "Mrs. Hargrove said people like Mommy don't belong near your family." On the other end, everything went still. Mariah could hear movement now, a chair scraping, papers shifting, a man in the background saying, "Sir?" before falling quiet. Damien's voice returned colder than before. "Who fired your mother?" Ava sniffled. "Mrs. Hargrove. Mr. Collins was there." Miss Beatrice watched. Nora laughed. Mariah closed her eyes. The names were out. Damien asked, "Where are you right now?" "Outside the big gate." "In the rain?" Ava looked down at her wet shoes. "Yes." His voice dropped. "Put your mother on the phone." Ava held the phone up. "Mommy." Mariah took it with trembling fingers. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, trying to sound strong but failing. "I'm sorry. She shouldn't have called you." "Mariah," Damien said, "are you outside my gate with your child?" "Yes, sir." "Were you fired?" "Mrs. Hargrove said I was." "Did she give you a reason?" Mariah swallowed hard. "She said I had gotten too comfortable. She said Ava didn't belong inside the house. She said someone like me should remember my place." The line went silent again. Then Damien spoke, and his voice no longer sounded polite. "Stay where you are." "Sir, you don't have to." "Stay where you are, Mariah." The call ended. Ava looked up at her mother. "Is he coming?" Mariah looked through the rain toward the empty road. "I don't know, baby." But 20 minutes later, headlights cut through the storm. A black car rushed down the private road, followed by 2 more vehicles. The guards near the gate stood up straight, startled. The first car stopped hard. The back door opened. Damien Blackwood stepped out in a dark coat, the rain hitting his shoulders before anyone could bring him an umbrella. He had not sent a driver. He had come himself. Mariah's breath caught. Ava whispered, "Mr. Blackwood." Damien walked straight to them. His eyes moved over Mariah's soaked uniform, Ava's wet raincoat, the cardboard box on the ground, and the silver name tag lying in the mud. His face hardened. He bent down in front of Ava first. "You did the right thing calling me," he said. Ava nodded, still crying. "They made Mommy leave." "I know." Then he stood and looked at Mariah. "I'm sorry." Mariah shook her head quickly. "Please don't apologize. I don't want trouble." Damien's jaw tightened. "You and your child were thrown out of your home in a storm. Trouble already happened." The gates opened slowly. Inside the courtyard, the staff had gathered under the front awning. Mrs. Hargrove stood in the center, pale but trying to look calm. Mr. Collins stood beside her. Beatrice looked down. Nora was no longer smiling. Damien picked up Mariah's wet cardboard box himself. Mariah gasped. "Sir, please, I can carry it." "No," he said quietly. "You've carried enough." Then he walked through the gates with Mariah and Ava beside him. Mrs. Hargrove forced a smile. "Mr. Blackwood, you're back early. There has been a misunderstanding." Damien stopped in front of her. Rain ran down his coat. "A misunderstanding?" he asked. Mrs. Hargrove nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." Mariah became emotional. The child exaggerated. "We were handling a staff matter." Damien looked at Ava, then at Mariah, then back at Mrs. Hargrove. You fired my employee, removed her child from their housing, and locked them outside in a storm. Mrs. Hargrove's smile cracked. Sir, she was becoming too comfortable. Damien stepped closer. Say what you really mean. No one breathed. Mrs. Hargrove's lips trembled. She forgot her place. Damien's eyes went cold. And in front of the entire staff he said, then tonight, everyone is going to learn theirs. Mrs. Hargrove realized her mistake the moment those words left her mouth. She forgot her place. The rain seemed to fall harder after that. Damien Blackwood stood in front of her without blinking. His face was calm, but the kind of calm that made every person under the awning afraid to move. Mariah held Ava close, still standing behind him with her wet uniform clinging to her arms. She wanted to disappear from the center of all this attention, but Ava's small hand was wrapped tightly around hers. Damien turned to Mr. Collins. You were present when Mariah was fired? Mr. Collins cleared his throat. Sir, Mrs. Hargrove made the decision based on staff discipline. Did Mariah break a rule? Mr. Collins hesitated. Damien's voice lowered. Answer me. No, sir. Damien turned to Beatrice. Did she steal? Beatrice shook her head quickly. No, sir. Was she violent, rude, late, careless with her work? No, sir, Beatrice whispered. Damien looked at Nora. Nora's face went pale. And you laughed? Nora swallowed. I didn't mean, Ava said you laughed. Nora looked at the little girl, then looked away. That was answer enough. Mrs. Hargrove stepped forward, desperate now. Mr. Blackwood, I was protecting this house. That woman was becoming too familiar. Her child was always around. Staff were uncomfortable. Damien looked around at the staff. Were you uncomfortable because Ava was a child? He asked. Or because she was a black child who smiled too freely in a house you thought she should be grateful to enter? No one answered. Mariah's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever said the truth so clearly before. Damien turned to the head of security. Pull the kitchen footage from the last 30 minutes. I want sound. Mrs. Hargrove's face drained. Sir, that isn't necessary. It is now. The security chief nodded and hurried inside. The staff remained frozen under the awning while Mariah stood in the rain, shaking from cold and humiliation. Damien noticed and immediately removed his coat. Mariah stepped back. No, sir, please. He placed it gently around her shoulders anyway. You and Ava are going inside. Mrs. Hargrove spoke sharply. But she's been terminated. Damien turned. No, you have. The words hit the courtyard like thunder. Mrs. Hargrove's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. I have served this family for 25 years. And tonight you used that power to throw a mother and child into the rain. He looked at Mr. Collins. You're fired too. Mr. Collins went stiff. Sir, you watched it happen. Then Damien looked at Beatrice. You will be suspended until I review whether you had any part in this. Beatrice began to cry softly. Nora took one step back, but Damien's eyes found her. And you, he said, are fired immediately. Ava pressed closer to Mariah. Damien looked at the staff still watching. Anyone else who believes a black woman should remember her place can pack tonight. No one spoke. Then Damien turned to Mariah and Ava, his voice softer. Come inside. This is still your home. Inside the mansion, the staff hallway became silent as Mariah and Ava walked back in. But this time, Mariah was not walking behind anyone. Damien walked beside her. Ava held her mother's hand with one hand and Damien's coat with the other, still afraid someone might push them out again. When they reached the staff quarters, Mariah stopped at the small room behind the garden. The door was open. Their things had been thrown into bags. Ava's drawings were on the floor. Mariah bent down slowly and picked up the picture Ava had made of them under the yellow sun. Her lips trembled. Damien saw it. That one drawing told him more than any report could. By morning, everything had changed. Mrs. Hargrove, Mr. Collins, and Nora were gone. Beatrice was placed under investigation. The remaining staff were gathered in the main hall, where Damien made one thing clear. No one in this house is invisible, he said. No one is beneath respect. And if anyone believes otherwise, leave now. No one moved. Then he turned to Mariah. You will not return to that room. Mariah's heart dropped. Sir? Damien's voice softened. You and Ava are moving into the East Cottage, full privacy, full salary, school support for Ava, and a new position as household supervisor. Mariah stared at him, unable to speak. Ava looked up. Mommy, Does that mean we can stay? Mariah pulled her daughter close, tears falling again. Yes, baby, she whispered. We can stay. 6 months later, Blackwood Estate felt different. Mariah no longer lowered her eyes when she walked through the halls. Ava started kindergarten with new shoes and a pink backpack, and every time Damien passed the garden, Ava ran to him and proudly said, I called you. Damien always smiled and answered, Yes, you did. Because one little phone call had not only saved her mother's job, it had changed the entire mansion forever. The little girl was still holding her mother's lunch bag when the mansion gates closed in their faces. Rain was falling hard outside Blackwood Estate. A black maid named Mariah stood on the driveway with her uniform soaked, her hands shaking, and one cardboard box pressed against her chest. Inside that box were 3 years of her life, a pair of worn shoes, Ava's small drawing, and one name tag that no one in that mansion had ever bothered to read with respect. Her 5-year-old daughter, Ava, looked up at her and whispered, Mommy, why are we leaving? Mariah tried to smile, but tears slipped down her face. Because 10 minutes earlier, the head housekeeper had fired her in front of the entire staff. People like you don't belong near the billionaire's family, she had said coldly. Take your child and disappear before Mr. Blackwood comes back. Mariah said nothing. She just held Ava's hand and walked out. But Ava remembered something. A small black card the billionaire had once given her mother after Ava returned his lost watch. If anyone ever hurts your mommy, he had told Ava gently, call this number. So while Mariah cried beside the gate, Ava pulled the card from her pocket, picked up her mother's old phone, and made one call. A deep voice answered. Blackwood speaking. Ava's voice trembled. Sir, they made mommy cry. They fired her because she's black. On the other end, the billionaire went completely silent. Then his voice turned cold. Who fired your mother? Ava looked back at the mansion gates and whispered, Everyone. 20 minutes later, the billionaire's black car stopped outside the estate, and by sunset, everyone who laughed at the maid was packing their things. The little girl was still holding her mother's lunch bag when the mansion gates closed in their faces. Rain fell over Blackwood Estate like the sky itself was ashamed of what had just happened inside. The iron gates were taller than any building Ava had ever seen up close, black and sharp at the top, with the letter B carved in gold across the center. Every morning those gates had opened for her mother. Every night they had closed behind them when Mariah finished work. But tonight they closed like they were throwing them away. Mariah Carter stood on the stone driveway with one cardboard box pressed against her chest. Her uniform was soaked, her hair was damp around her face. Her deep brown skin glistened under the rain, but she did not lift a hand to wipe her tears. Inside the box were all the things the staff had shoved at her before pushing her out. One spare pair of flat shoes, a small framed drawing Ava had made of them standing under a yellow sun, a cracked coffee mug, and the silver name tag she had worn for 3 years. That name tag was the only thing in that mansion that had ever called her by her real name. To everyone else, she had been the maid, the girl, you there, or worse. Ava stood beside her, 5 years old, small in her purple raincoat, her curls damp at the edges, her little fingers wrapped tightly around the paper lunch bag she had carried for her mother. Inside was half a sandwich Mariah had not gotten time to eat. Mommy, Ava whispered, looking up at her. Are we going home? Mariah tried to answer, but her throat closed. Home. For the last 3 years, home had been a narrow staff room behind the rose garden. It had one bed, one small window, and a heater that made strange sounds at night. But it had been safe. It had been theirs. Ava had taped drawings to the wall. Mariah had folded their clothes under the bed. On cold nights, they slept close together and listened to the mansion parties from far away, pretending the music was for them too. Now even that was gone. Mariah forced a smile so weak it hurt. Yes, baby, she said softly. We're going somewhere. Where? Mariah looked down at the wet driveway. She did not know. 10 minutes earlier, she had been in the staff kitchen, tying Ava's shoelace, when Mrs. Hargrove stormed in. Mrs. Hargrove was the head housekeeper of Blackwood Estate. A white woman in her late 50s, thin as a blade, with gray hair pulled so tight it made her face look permanently angry. She had worked for the Blackwood family for 25 years and treated that history like it made her the owner of every person under the roof. Behind her stood 3 staff members, Mr. Collins the estate manager, Beatrice the kitchen supervisor, and Nora, the young maid who always laughed when Mrs. Hargrove made cruel remarks. Mariah stood immediately. "Mrs. Hargrove?" she asked. Mrs. Hargrove dropped a white envelope on the table. "You're done here." Mariah stared at it. "Excuse me?" "Fired," Mrs. Hargrove said. "Effective immediately." Ava moved closer to her mother's leg. Mariah's heart started pounding. There must be some mistake. "The mistake," Mrs. Hargrove said coldly, "was letting someone like you get too comfortable in this house." The kitchen went silent. Mariah's hand tightened around Ava's shoulder. "Someone like you." She had heard those words before, dressed in different sentences, spoken with different smiles. But they always meant the same thing. "I've never stolen," Mariah said, her voice shaking. "I've never missed a shift." Mr. Blackwood himself said. "Mr. Blackwood is not here," Mrs. Hargrove cut in. "And while he is away on business, this house needs to be corrected." Beatrice looked away. Mr. Collins crossed his arms. Nora smirked. Mariah swallowed hard. "Corrected?" Mrs. Hargrove stepped closer and lowered her voice, though everyone still heard. "Your daughter has been wandering around like she belongs here. You have been seen near the family office too many times. You speak to Mr. Blackwood too casually. People are noticing." Mariah felt heat rise behind her eyes. "I speak to him only when he speaks to me, and that is already too much." Ava looked confused. "Mommy didn't do bad." Nora laughed under her breath. Mariah bent slightly and whispered, "It's okay, Ava." But it was not okay. Mrs. Hargrove pointed toward the hallway. "Pack your things, you have 5 minutes." Mariah stared at her. "My daughter and I live in the staff quarters. I need time to find somewhere." "You should have thought of that before forgetting your place." That sentence broke something quiet inside Mariah. For 3 years she had scrubbed floors until her fingers cracked. She had worked through fever. She had served guests who looked through her. She had taken extra shifts when other maids called in sick. She had stayed late without complaint because every dollar mattered. And now they were throwing her out like spilled water. "Mrs. Hargrove," Mariah said, trying one last time, "please, at least let me speak to Mr. Blackwood when he returns." Mrs. Hargrove laughed. "You really think a billionaire is going to stop his life for a black maid and her little girl?" Ava's eyes widened. Mariah felt her daughter hear every word. That hurt more than the firing. Before Mariah could respond, Mr. Collins picked up the cardboard box and shoved it toward her. "Let's not make a scene." But there had already been a scene. Every staff member watched as Mariah gathered Ava's small backpack, her shoes, and the drawing from the staff room wall. No one helped, no one spoke. Nora stood in the hallway and whispered, "Finally." Then the gates closed. Now Mariah stood in the rain, with no job, no room, and no idea where to take her child. Ava looked up at her mother's wet face and began to cry. "Mommy, did they fire you because of me?" Mariah dropped to her knees immediately, the cardboard box sliding onto the wet ground. "No," she said, holding Ava's face in both hands. "No, baby, never because of you." "But Mrs. Hargrove said I don't belong." Mariah pulled her close, and this time she could not stop the tears. "You belong everywhere I am," she whispered. "Do you hear me? Everywhere." Ava hugged her mother tightly. Then, through her tears, the little girl remembered something. A black business card. The one Mr. Blackwood had given her 2 weeks ago after she found his father's old watch under the library sofa. Ava pulled away and reached into the pocket of her purple raincoat. "Mommy," she whispered, "Mr. Blackwood said to call him." Mariah's eyes widened. Before she could stop her, Ava had already pulled out the card. Ava held the black business card in both tiny hands, trying to keep it dry from the rain. Mariah stared at it like it might burn her. "Ava," she whispered, "give that to me." But Ava shook her head, tears still running down her cheeks. "He said if someone hurts you, I call him." Mariah's heart clenched. 2 weeks ago, it had felt like a sweet moment, nothing more. Mr. Blackwood had been in the library, searching for his father's old gold watch. The whole mansion had been turned upside down because that watch was the last thing his father had worn before he died. Staff had searched the office, the bedroom, the garden room, everywhere. Then Ava had found it. She had been sitting quietly on the library rug while Mariah dusted the shelves. Her crayon rolled under the sofa, and when she reached for it, her fingers touched something cold and metal. She pulled it out and held up the watch with innocent pride. "Mommy, Is this treasure? When Damien Blackwood entered the room and saw it in her hand, his entire face changed. He knelt in front of Ava, took the watch gently, and thanked her like she had returned a piece of his heart. Then he had given her that card. If anyone in this house ever makes your mother cry, he had said softly, you call me. Mariah had thought he was only being kind to a child, but Ava had believed every word. Now, standing outside the estate gates in the rain, Ava looked at the number on the card and pressed it into her mother's old phone. Mariah reached for it. Baby, no. Mr. Blackwood is busy. He's in New York. We can't. The call connected. Mariah froze. A deep voice answered after the second ring. Blackwood speaking. Ava's lips trembled. For 1 second, she looked up at her mother, as if asking permission. Mariah could not breathe. Then Ava spoke. Mr. Blackwood? There was a pause. Who is this? It's Ava, she said, crying harder now. Mariah's little girl. The voice on the other end changed immediately. Ava, are you okay? Ava wiped her nose with the sleeve of her purple raincoat. No. Mariah covered her mouth. Damien's voice sharpened. Where is your mother? Huh. She's here, Ava said. She's crying. Silence. Not empty silence. Dangerous silence. Then Damien asked, slowly, why is your mother crying? Ava looked back at the black gates. They fired her. Mariah shook her head quickly, whispering, Ava, please. But Ava kept talking. They pushed us outside. Mommy's box fell in the rain. Mrs. Hargrove said people like Mommy don't belong near your family. On the other end, Damien said nothing. Mariah could hear faint sounds through the phone now. A chair moving, papers shifting. A man's voice in the background asking something, then stopping. Damien's voice came back colder. Who fired your mother? Ava sniffled. Mrs. Hargrove, and Mr. Collins was there, and Miss Beatrice. And Nora laughed. Mariah closed her eyes. The names were out. There was no taking them back. Damien asked, where are you right now? Outside the big gate. In the rain? Ava looked down at her soaked shoes. Yes. Damien's voice dropped so low Mariah barely heard it. Put your mother on the phone. Ava held the phone up. Mommy. Mariah stared at it. Her hand shook as she took it. Mr. Blackwood, she said, trying to sound calm, but her voice broke on his name. I'm sorry, she shouldn't have called you. Mariah, Damien said, are you outside my gate in the rain with your child? She looked away, ashamed even though she had done nothing wrong. Yes, sir. Were you fired? Her throat tightened. Mrs. Hargrove said I was. Did she give you written cause? No. Did she accuse you of misconduct? Mariah hesitated. Damien heard it. What did she say? Mariah swallowed. She said I had gotten too comfortable. She said Ava didn't belong inside the house. She said, her voice broke, she said someone like me should remember my place. The line went silent again. Then Damien spoke, and this time his voice sounded nothing like the polite billionaire from dinner rooms and library halls. Stay where you are. Mariah's eyes widened. Sir, you don't have to. Stay where you are, Mariah. The call ended. Ava looked up at her. Is he coming? Mariah looked at the road beyond the estate, rain blurring the headlights of passing cars. I don't know, baby. But 20 minutes later, the answer came roaring down the private road. A black car turned through the trees, fast enough that the tires sprayed water across the stone driveway. Behind it came 2 more vehicles. The guards at the gate stood up straight, startled. The first car stopped hard. The back door opened. Damien Blackwood stepped out in a dark coat, his hair damp from the rain before anyone could bring him an umbrella. He had not sent someone. He had come himself. Mariah's breath caught. Ava whispered, Mr. Blackwood. Damien walked straight to them. His eyes moved over Mariah's soaked uniform, the cardboard box on the ground, Ava's wet raincoat, and the silver name tag lying in the mud. Something in his face hardened. He bent down first to Ava. You did the right thing calling me, he said. Ava nodded, still crying. They made Mommy leave. I know. Then he stood and looked at Mariah. I'm sorry. Mariah shook her head quickly. Please don't apologize. I don't want trouble. Damien's jaw tightened. You were thrown out of your home with a 5-year-old child in the rain. Trouble already happened. The gate security guard opened the iron gate slowly, nervous now. Inside the courtyard, several staff members had gathered under the front awning. Mrs. Hargrove stood in the center, her face pale with shock. Mr. Collins stood beside her, suddenly less confident. Nora was there too, no longer laughing. Damien picked up Mariah's cardboard box himself. Mariah gasped softly. "Sir, please, I can carry it." "No," he said, "you've carried enough." Then, holding the soaked box in one hand, Damien walked through the gates with Mariah and Ava beside him. The staff watched in silence. Mrs. Hargrove forced a smile. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, "you're back early. There has been a misunderstanding." Damien stopped in front of her. Rain ran down the shoulders of his coat. His voice was calm, but every person there felt the danger in it. "A misunderstanding." Mrs. Hargrove nodded quickly. "Yes." Mariah became emotional. "The child exaggerated. We were handling a staff matter." Damien looked at Ava, then at Mariah. Then he turned back to Mrs. Hargrove. "You fired my employee, removed her child from their housing, and locked them outside in a storm." Mrs. Hargrove's smile cracked. "Sir, with respect, she was becoming inappropriate with her position." "Inappropriate how?" Mrs. Hargrove hesitated. Damien stepped closer. "Say it clearly." No one moved. Mrs. Hargrove's lips trembled. She forgot her place. Damien's eyes went cold, and in front of the entire staff he said, "Then tonight everyone is going to learn theirs." Ava held the black business card in both tiny hands, trying to protect it from the rain. Mariah stared at it with fear in her eyes. "Ava," she whispered, "give that to me, baby." But Ava shook her head. Her purple raincoat was soaked, her curls were wet around her face, and tears mixed with the raindrops on her cheeks. "He said to call him if someone hurts you." Mariah's heart tightened.